Hi guys, welcome back to the Beamware podcast. I'm Brittany.
I'm Maria. And today, Brittany, I think you texted me about Celeste Ng or something the other day.
I honestly don't even I
You
don't
remember?
even here's I don't even know what I sent to you, and here's the deal. I'm in
Was
a
it
place right now where I'm
was this
realizing,
long? It was a whole
God,
thing.
I am
It was
like,
probably you were probably doing text to speech or whatever,
wait, what
speech to
day was
text.
that?
Monday at 6:40 in the morning.
What was the content of that one? What was the topic of that one?
You're listening to a podcast episode that has Celeste Ng who wrote Little Fires Everywhere.
Oh yeah. There was something before that too that I wanted to talk about,
Oh,
but I'm in
probably.
a really like this is why I'm eating what I'm eating right now, and like Gunter's by me and it's making me feel better, but he's not by me because he wants to be by me. He's by me because I
He
have
wants the
fish.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like as I was driving home from my last client this morning, I felt myself shift into like the okay, you gave too much of yourself to other people this weekend and now you need to go into real hard introvert mode.
That's one of your weeks.
So I'm just like feeling like very emotionally drained right now. So,
That's nice. Let's skip that topic then. I don't know
okay.
what the topic was.
I don't know what it was
Um,
either. I'll think about it next week.
Great. Um, so I have nothing prepared.
Okay, cool.
That's great. Um, Let me just
I'm gonna
go.
try to mute myself while I'm chewing. Sorry, friends.
It's fine, I'm sure. I mean, they watched us eat the other week a whole bucket of not a whole bucket of chicken, but like chicken and spaghetti. And you're muted as you're talking. Okay, great. I don't have anything prepared. Thanks for this. So I'm just gonna go on the. I don't know if you know what the Nextdoor app is. You know what it is? Do you have it? Are you part of your next door neighborhood? It's like sometimes the funniest thing. I want to see if there's like anything like weird happening in my neighborhood. Because it's literally, if people don't know what next door is, it's basically just a news feed, and people ask the most random shit and have the most like random thoughts about things.
I've used it on like a business end, so like a business, like your business can be
That too,
like
yeah. There's a lot of
recommended and stuff.
advertisements on here too.
Yeah, but I don't really
Like
stay on it.
sometimes it's interesting sometimes because like people are like, hi, I'm whatever, nice to meet you. I'm 57, medically retired. Like go into like random ass detail. Have way too much free time. Wife still works and my days are long looking for things to do. Like just like the people are so weird on here. And then there's like, why is there a helicopter in this area? Like there's like random like things and like no one ever responds. But like, man, there was a post the other day about like Girl Scouts or something that I have to someone was ranting. Oh, here it is. It's titled Safety Issue and More. That's the title of the post. Does it bother anyone else about the fact on several main intersections there's someone, in quotes, asking for money just about every weekend? One week, the local cheerleading squad, one week, the Girl Scouts, one week, someone else. First of all, they run into the street while their parents sit on chairs watching them run into the streets. When you don't donate, especially when it's the fourth or fifth time you've gone through the street today, they look at you with an attitude I haven't seen since my kids were told to clean up their rooms. Like this person is just going off. It seems like it is an expectation that every time I drive by, I should be shelling out money. I would much rather see them run a car wash and maybe earn the money in the first place than is not on a major intersection. That I would support more favorably. I'm not trying to be mean, but it has gotten out of hand. And like the first top comment is like, I don't find it any like they're like I support them. Like and there's like 50 like comments on this. Like
I
things like
really
that are on
just
this
like
app.
I really just I don't understand why
Yeah.
like you are allowed to have your opinions and your feelings on things, and I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say that it's not frustrating when like someone runs in front of my car while I'm trying to get through a light, but
Uh-huh.
like why do you have to go the extra step to exert negative energy into the world by inventing and writing a post about it? Like
Like on Nextdoor that
this is
people
what
can
like journaling is for. Like get a journal. I get it. It's better if you get it out of your system, but like get a journal, write it
Mhm.
down to or like say it to somebody you know. Don't go out and tell it to a bunch of strangers.
And it's
Because
like
then it gets taken super out of, this is what the downfall of social media, because then it gets taken super out of context and you kind of just look like a dick. And like I get that everyone else is feeling the same, like a lot of other people are feeling the same thing, but like you don't
they're not. People are
you
like,
don't
it doesn't bother me at all.
you don't need to start like a conversation about it, because at the end of the day you're not going to do anything to change it, and it literally
And
affects you for 10 seconds. So like why do you care so much?
I love how he's complaining about like Girl Scouts and like cheerlead, like the kids that like don't have enough funding for their schools or activities and are looking for funding elsewhere. I just think it's just so funny. Like things like that are happening on Nextdoor right now in my neighborhood.
I was
Can
in
you go through
a
more or
coffee
you have
house.
thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
I was in a coffee house yesterday,
Sure.
meeting one of my friends from college, and
Uh-huh.
she lives like further south than where we are, so we met
Yeah.
halfway at this super fucking cool like coffee house that's in Allentown, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was sitting there waiting for her to come,
Yeah.
I heard like a couple tables away from me what I understood to be a gay black man, like a straight white woman, and a straight old white guy having like a conversation about um like sexism in our country,
Okay.
and like the
Okay.
progressiveness of it. And so mind you, I had just had my hair trial for the wedding, and I was like going crazy over like trying to make a schedule for like what's happening on the day of and all this stupid annoying ass bullshit. So I wasn't 100% paying attention, but I like caught glimpses of it, and it was just interesting.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where if it wasn't like if COVID wasn't a thing, especially
Yeah.
me like nowadays, like would be totally like gung ho to be like I really want to get involved in this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I like hesitated because I was like, we're inside a coffee house. I don't know these people. I'm not from here. Like I don't have
Yeah.
like
You have no
my friend
connection.
wasn't there yet, so if like anything went wrong,
Oh.
like I was all by
Yeah.
myself.
You'd
I was like, I
be.
gotta be smart about this. But it was just really interesting. It was nice to see it happening in a public place. But
Yeah.
I just kind of felt bad because the girl, I guess we should talk about that thing that I texted you because it relates to what we talked about last week
Oh.
anyway. I guess I'm going there.
Okay.
I don't know why this came up in my brain. I guess because
I don't know. I
people
just read a
ranting and
I was like, I just
people
read a Nextdoor.
ranting, people
Nextdoor
ranting
post.
about something and then having to bring it up. You know, like,
Sure.
because I guess in my brain, like, I was happy to see that conversation happening, and like the bullshit that just comes up on social media is unnecessary and irrelevant and not getting us anywhere.
And also like, yeah. It's just funny because it's on Nextdoor. Who's really paying attention? It's not like Facebook or
I,
like Twitter or
uh,
something.
but yeah, this
Anyways.
conversation was happening, and one of the big things that it was super out of context, so I had to just like whatever. But one of the things that was like being brought up that the woman was saying was about how like women used to be held as property, right? Like women
Yeah.
used to be seen as property, and there's still like
Dowries and like, agreements.
a little bit of there's like we're in a bumpy road of making a transition fully out of that, because I would agree a lot of like
Yeah.
policies and things at play, like we're not really out of that yet. Like take a look at what's going on with like abortions and birth control rights. Like we're not fully, we are very much still in a place where women don't have the right to make choices for themselves, and that definitely stems from the fact of like they used to be property of somebody else and were never allowed to actually make any choices for themselves.
Yeah, and shout out to my couple of friends, one Lauren in Jersey and my friend Sam in Pennsylvania. They held marches
Awesome.
for like women's rights and like abortion rights and stuff like that.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Just as a
Um,
shout out.
Something else there, I wanted to bring up something else interesting about paradoxes, but we can talk about that next time because I don't really think I have the brain capacity to go into that.
Interesting. I don't even know.
I
Okay.
know, out of context. But anyway, so I'm listening to this conversation. I guess this is relevant to what I wanted to talk about. So, and then, so I heard her say that, and I was like, oh, that's such an interesting thing. And then my brain went back into what I was doing. And then like a little bit later, I heard like both, and this was what was interesting too, because the perspective was like from a black man and a white man, and like they were kind of making, I like overheard them getting into talking about how like things are progressing, and like we need to be more patient with that progression.
Okay. A lot of people don't have some patience. It's not gonna happen overnight, right?
Right. But like the argument came out as like a, I don't know, like we're doing the best we can,
Nothing's gonna change that.
and like you should be happy with what you have.
Oh, I see. I see. As opposed
And
to like it could be worse. Like that's their argument.
right. And like it's gonna take a while, and like I think the whole conversation actually really started when they were talking about politics, because I think they were talking about like I think they were talking about Trump and like the pussy grabbing situation. Um
Okay.
but it just like rubbed me the wrong way, because and I think it's like the same thing that we can take a stance with like racism too. It's like you can't be like, hey, 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 to the person who's been victimized. You can't turn around and be like, hey, 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 you should sit back down and not be upset about where things are, because look at where they could be. And it's
Right.
like,
Like that's
you
not a
don't,
valid argument to me.
right,
Like
you don't get
you
the right
shouldn't
to
be.
tell me to be patient and tell me that I should
No.
be grateful for where I am, when
It could.
there's
Yeah.
still oppression going on, and it's not like, yay, things are better, but like kind of what we were talking about last week.
Yeah. Like that's not a valid argument to me.
And then,
Honestly.
so mind you, Maria and I were talking all of this. When I was re-listening to our episode from last week, the end of it, I was just like,
I really can't remember
Jesus,
the end of it.
where we started going into like the happiness stuff and
Oh,
like
when
the
we
scale.
veered towards like the happiness
I
report.
honestly
Yeah.
really feel like that section with the both of us like talking and breaking everything down and what we're like, what it brought up, just needs
Yeah.
to, like, every American just needs to listen to that part of our podcast. So later towards the end, when we were talking about one of those steps of happiness, if you didn't listen to that episode, go back and listen to that episode. You can literally skip all the BS in the beginning and just go to the end now. But we were talking about the factors that contribute to national happiness, and one of them was this idea
based
of,
on
like,
that report.
based on that report, right, was about freedom and like sense of freedom and opportunity.
Yeah.
So interesting enough, have you seen or read the book Little Flowers Everywhere?
No, I've heard of it, and I haven't read the book. I
Dude,
mean,
you
I've
have
heard
to
of
watch
books. Yeah.
the show.
It's on Hulu. Yeah.
So first of all, friends, Kerry Washington, Reese Witherspoon. Reese Witherspoon is my spirit animal. Like like if I was a country girl, like love her so much.
Right.
As an actor, as a producer, as a businesswoman, she's just such a badass. So Reese actually read the book because the author of the book, Celeste Ng, like had asked her, like, hey, can you read this and tell me what you think? And Reese actually read it and immediately was like, this has to be something that we produce into a show or a series or something on film. And she asked Kerry Washington to come in and play like her counterpart.
Her counterpart.
And Kerry Washington, which I didn't know, has a production company, and that's what they use to make it
Produce
a series
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was listening to this interview with Celeste Ng, and she was talking about the story. Are you looking at the synopsis of the books right now?
Yeah.
Good. No, you should be. No, because I want to give you context. So, guys, if you're not familiar with the context of the book is about a location, a place called Shaker Heights, Ohio, and they were talking about something with its laws. It's just a very like white elitist place. And a lot of the like things are better now. So like everything that we were just talking about, and the like you should be happy with the way it is because it's so much better than it used to be. We're one of the last towns to pass laws on like, I don't remember what it was. If you look up like Shaker Heights racial laws or something, there's like, I don't remember what it was that they were very behind on. But
okay, gotcha.
So
it's a real town.
Yeah, it's a real town, and this is where this author grew up.
Oh,
and
even better.
She writes. It's amazing because she writes the book with such an homage to her town. Because now, mind you, she's an Asian American woman, but she writes the book as like the location is its own character. Like the book, like the place where they live has so much influence on people that it like acts as a character in itself. It's really cool.
It's kind of personified in a sense.
Yeah, and Reese Witherspoon plays Elena, who's like this from the town, born and bred, like super white, old school, all that stuff. Tries to be progressive, but like doesn't really know how that's like, and like goes through this whole midlife crisis of realizing how like she doesn't know who she is because she's been living in what she's been expected to live in, like in the town essentially. And then Kerry Washington plays Mia, who's like who's a black woman who actually comes out as being lesbian in the show, in the book. And moves into town. Now, what's interesting about them is that they both have daughters, and there's a lot of like talk
Uh-huh.
about motherhood, but they all have
Uh-huh.
like families and lives and careers, and it's just it's the depths of like woven isms, like
Right.
motherism, mothering. I made an
So
ism.
in the book, is there anything like does Mia have like do they specifically say what race she is in the book?
Oh, she's black.
Okay, because I didn't know if like because I'm literally reading it. I don't. It doesn't. Wikipedia doesn't have like their race or anything.
Oh yeah.
But it just says Mia works at a Chinese restaurant. I was like, I'm not trying to like generalize here.
In all honesty,
Like,
in all honesty,
and like Celeste is like, she's Asian. I was like, does she have an
she
Asian
is.
in this book or?
In all honesty, I haven't read the book yet. It is now on my book
Oh, okay.
list, but it's 100% possible that she could be an Asian American woman. But I don't think it was ever said enough. Or I kind of hope that she's like intentionally a black woman who also works in a Chinese restaurant, because I will tell you, watching the series, when you
Yeah.
first realize that she works in like a Chinese restaurant and she's the only black, like she's one of the only few black people in town, and she
Yeah.
now works in a Chinese restaurant, it added like a level of like, ooh, what's going on here? Because
Interesting.
that's not
Because
that's
I'm
out of the
reading.
norms of what you'd see. So they might have done that on
Yeah.
purpose. I don't know.
I don't know. Like, look, it could be a like a what is it called? Artistic like
Yeah.
whatever to make her black in the
Well, because
TV
Kerry
show, and then
Washington was able to like act out all the personalities so well.
right because
And
I
I
mean
have to say,
I'm
it
just
would
looking at
be such
Wikipedia and it doesn't say anything about the
it
race, so
would
I'm
be
just
such
wondering.
an interesting statement on, now I have like all of these deeper thoughts, because Mia has this very like badass bitch on the outside like
Yeah,
persona, and then like
yeah,
has a lot of the sensitivity from like trauma on the inside. And some of the things that she says, like they pull a lot of quotes directly from the book, like when
sure,
they wrote
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Some of the things that Mia says, and the really really like defensive personality that she has outright, I've never seen an Asian woman on TV in that type of,
way,
like, if we were going to look at stereotypical personalities,
yeah,
like the personality that Mia portrays in the show is very much like stereotypically a black woman. So,
okay, yeah,
and if me like as a character, if Mia has
yeah,
all of that tough and defensiveness, that would be a totally new thing to see in a leading Asian American
Asian actors,
character.
Asian
You know what I'm
American, yeah,
saying? So like
no,
that
one
brings
hundred
up a
percent.
whole lot of questions for me, and now I'm very curious to know. So when I read the book, I'll let you know. Um,
Yeah,
anyway, that was really
either
off
way,
track, friends.
yeah,
But
either
anyway,
way,
they she
yeah. What
talks
did your
about
text say?
what we were talking about at the end of our episode last week. So at the end of our episode, when we were talking about those the data that was collected on their research to help like make up the 10 factors of happiness,
Yeah,
um, freedom and opportunity is a big one.
yeah, right.
And we, or I, and Maria just nodded, concluded that like we have this illusion in our country of, go back and listen to that whole part, guys, because I don't remember what I said, but it really was like very, it
Yeah, it
was
was a
very
short
to the,
stint.
it was like, yeah, it was to the point. Like we give the illusion of the fact that we have all this freedom, but there's a lot of like emotional damage that's done to make you feel like you can't actually go after it. So
Right.
10 minutes into this podcast that I'm listening to, this episode, she's having a conversation, she's being interviewed, and she starts talking about, and this is like me rewording what she says. Children get told that they can be whatever they want to be, and that they have all of this sense of freedom as they're growing up.
Right.
But then the second they move past anything that exceeds where everyone else feels comfortable and what they're able to do, they start to
Uh-huh.
get emotionally abused and majorly manipulated about what they can do with life as an American person. She literally was talking about this the night after Maria and I were talking about this. And I was like, this is
One
so
of those moments.
crazy.
Yeah.
And this woman, I mean, this woman's older than the both of us.
Hmm.
Right? Like she is from a couple generations before us, and it was just crazy for me to hear her talking about that and kind of like validating the point that we raised last, like the night beforehand,
Yeah.
in our previous episode. And it like kind of made me realize like, oh, some people are awake to this.
I feel like a majority of people are awake that they won't change the way that they are or the way that it is. It
And
being society, I guess.
because it's like, and that's like a big like factor of fear, right? Like there's so much fear and so much scarcity. Like I know that my parents, I mean, my parents are slightly like a generation above your parents. My parents are a little older
Yeah.
than yours.
Yeah.
And I know that my parents 100% growing up were like, you can be whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. And then when it hit the point where it was like, oh, now you're actually going to go to college for the ants. Oh, you're actually going to start a business of your own and
Right.
not go get a full-time job. Oh, you're actually going to do these things.
It's yeah. It sucks for. I mean, you obviously this is a personal thing, so it sucks
No,
that
no,
this
it's
happened. No, 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 I'm saying like for
it is a this is I'm using an example. Like
exactly
my life is an example of this.
right, and also just generally, I feel like this is just America.
Right.
You know, like
And
I can feel comfortable that this is a generalization.
I think that it's going to be really interesting when like more of our generation's kids start to hit that 17, 18 age and see if we go into that same place of having the fear or if we
Mhm.
allow them to go for it.
I would hope it's the latter
I would hope it is
with
too,
what social media has shown me, at
but
least.
I feel like it's starting to go, like it's starting, the tides are starting to shift. But I just think it was really interesting that she literally had this whole conversation about how this has existed like for generations. It's been happening where that weird shift we were talking about, like the American dream was a hope for previous generations when they first got here or immigrated here.
I was
So
gonna say
like
you can add in the
everything,
layer of immigration because like it
yeah,
also depends on how many generations back
that's very true.
you're or how many
And I mean, if you're
generations you are
looking at
American.
a lot of the chunks of all, like when a lot of that like American Renaissance really started happening and industrialism started happening, and so many people were like influxing into the country,
Hmm.
like we have that is such a pivotal moment, right? Where
Yeah.
all of those people were really coming with hope, and then from there, people were just being bred into the system. Um, it's just
Hmm.
I just feel like social history is like one of these things that I guess I really like.
Is
It's
what
like
we don't learn about.
psychology, and then my understanding of like sociology is just like so. I just like
I have
oh,
a
I think it's
very yeah,
so
I have
cool,
a
guys.
very minimal knowledge of sociology. I took like one sociology class in college and it was taught by an Asian American woman. And I thought it was the coolest
Cool.
fucking thing because she was talking about Asian American sociology and stuff like that. But
So
you couldn't I couldn't tell you what I learned honestly. It was just the fact that there was an Asian American teaching that class. I was
got
like,
it. I get
pretty
it.
fucking cool.
Valid. But I feel like instead of just taking history classes, because history is,
I really think we should learn about
I was
social
gonna
history.
say that I was gonna say that history is just facts, and then I realized that's not
Uh,
even true.
yeah, that's not even
History
true.
is just facts through the lens of the way your country wants them to see
I
them.
was like, through the lens of the white
But
men writing your textbooks. Yeah,
correct. But yeah, I feel like, and we had like social studies, but our social studies classes were just history
it was just
classes.
civics. Yeah, it was just
It
like not even
wasn't
civics. Honestly, it
No,
was
our
like
civics classes were like literal civics classes. Like you should learn how
yeah,
your government works, but not really.
but
Um,
not really because it was only the federal and not your state and local.
right. But I mean, we didn't even
So
learn that right anyway, so it doesn't even matter.
exactly. No,
But
so I
like
feel
we
like
should have
social
more
history.
sociology and social study, like actual social studies.
You would think, because again, that just going back to that Asian American sociology class that I took, whatever, I learned, I think, the most about being Asian American in that semester than like I've ever in my like
That's so
K through
cool.
12
Cool.
um
And I don't
education.
think, and this makes me think, you know how we talk about all the time how like if you don't study history, it will repeat itself.
Correct.
You want to know what I think?
Sure.
And this is something that I just dawned on. I think that if you don't study social history, it's bound to repeat itself.
Yeah. I
Because
mean,
if you think
honestly,
about
sociology
those,
is so like undermined.
yeah, like those cycles that, and it's like, here's the deal, right? It's not the history of the past does not just all of a sudden recreate itself. It's the
Right.
people that are in
It's
those
the
social
people.
systems that recreate,
Yeah.
right? And like that, we should be studying more of that so that we can see where we went wrong and like how we negatively impacted ourselves and people. You know what I
Capitalism.
think? This is what we're gonna
Greed.
do. We're just
Yeah.
gonna wipe out our entire government and we're gonna restructure
Are you
it
anti-state?
based on no, I'm not. But we're gonna restructure it based on like instead of a law like law and order, we're gonna restructure it based on like social the studies
Uh-huh.
of social people
Well,
like so that like socially sociology and psychology. And that's how our
that's kind of
government's
like
gonna
the whole abolishing the police um situation.
Is
Like
where it
opposed,
stands.
yeah, like it's like as opposed to calling the police when there's a mental health crisis, you go to a mental health counselor or something,
Hmm.
which is more, I guess, towards the sociology
I mean,
social aspect.
if you think about when most of the issues between the police and community happen, it's when there's a separation instead of an integration. When the
Correct.
police don't know enough about the community that they're serving and the people within that community, that there
Hmm.
creates a barrier that leads
And just like
to
the
violence
lack
and
of
bad things.
like I don't know, empathy. I don't know if it's empathy, to be quite honest with you. It's just I don't know, because like I'm just thinking about also happy Filipino American History Month. It's October.
Cool.
I was just thinking about, I think it's Seattle or somewhere in California. I can't, West Coast, whatever. The mother of a Filipino American, her son was having a mental health crisis,
Mm.
basically. So they called the police because they didn't know who else to call, 911, whoever showed up first. And the police got there and killed the son. And I think the son was,
Oh
no, don't quote me on this.
my goodness.
Either he served or he was like some prestigious like medical,
Oh
I can't
god.
remember because there were so many during that time period, so many, it was during the Stop Asian Hate like
Mm.
situations. I really can't remember, but he was Filipino American, so that's why I remember this specific story. But um yeah, I mean, just going back to just sociology and just social history and like just being, I don't know,
I
a
can't.
human, like
I good.
like things like
That's like the
that,
thing. There should be a separate
like
type
a separate
of,
branch or something, like, or
yeah,
just like
for like dealing
knowing,
with social, like even when it comes to like they should just be a part of like the dispatch team. Like somebody who
like, yeah,
can,
some
some
branch of like,
psychologist or somebody
yeah,
who's used
something,
to working with trauma and like trauma
yeah,
victims and
because
things
you
like
know,
that should be the type of people that are on that. You want to know what, guys? Maria and I are putting our input here. When we reform the police system, this is something that we petition to happen because
because like
we
the
would save
parent,
so
like
many
the mom
people.
did the right thing, right?
Right.
Because
Who
like
else?
she didn't know, like she didn't know what was gonna happen, like she just needed aid from the community.
Right. Right.
So you call, emergency services, whoever, and I mean that's the last thing that they want to happen.
I mean, in all honesty, never mind. I'm not gonna say anything.
I
Um, but
don't know why we got on this topic.
if we were
Sociology
to
is
if we were
important.
to restructure those departments, the departments of law and order, and reallocate unnecessary funds. I'm just gonna say that to this type of work being done, it would
Yeah,
change the function of our society.
right. And like,
I'm for this. I would also, hands down, like not a therapist, but would literally love to be
a
the kind
volunteer
of
or something,
person who can do something like that.
like a volunteer or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. What?
Okay, we were talking about little fires everywhere. So that
Okay.
was
What about Celeste Ng or Ing?
so that yeah, that was what I was thinking about. It was just really like oddly timed that it was within like a 12-hour time span that I'm listening to this woman talk about this.
So I mean, because her whole point was that we have freedom until someone else, until like a child's opinions aren't valid in someone else's
Well,
eyes, basically.
we have freedom until your freedoms are manipulated out of fear.
And that's such like bad. I'm gonna say parenting. It's like you give so much
But you
hope to a
can't,
child,
right?
and then all of a sudden it's like, just kidding. Like, I want you to do this instead, even though I know that you really like this other thing.
It's such a
But also, like, I can understand coming from an immigrant family, of first
parenting
generation
is
immigrant
such a
like family.
like
It,
okay,
it's hard.
parenting is such a fucked up thing for humans. It really is because we have to put so much more thought into
Yeah.
the way that we raise our kids than like animals do. Or sorry, let me rephrase that. Other
Okay.
animals do because we are
Okay.
animals. But if you think about it, right, like, and it's funny too. Like if you look at literally any other animal that doesn't have a choice, specifically because it's funny. Like let's make this connection to birds, right? Birds don't get big at all, and they're pushed out of trees.
Oh. They
Like
literally just go, whoop, yep,
it with and like turtles don't never even have a parent. They come out of their eggs
yeah.
and swim into the ocean and have to fend for themselves.
Hmm.
We we are so gross in the way that we like
Micromanage our children.
no because we literally identify them as ourselves.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Let's be real here. A little bit of parenting or like having children is so that you can have a mini. Like
No,
it's very
no, not a
narcissistic.
little bit. Let's be true about like the
Well, I
90%.
don't know.
Well,
I don't want
if you think
children,
about
so
if you think about the I will say that I think that we've overcome that in what you just said, right? If you think about like our generation's not really more people in our generations not wanting children. If you think about the just basic
because overpopulation is a climate
if you
change
think about
issue.
the just basic function of being a parent, it's just to make sure that your genealogy continues. That's like the only reason why. So that whole like narcissistic parenting extension of me, like I want a mini me, is a thing that's like never gonna go away in our brains.
Okay, yeah, it's
You know what I
society.
mean? Like
Part of
we're
society. Yeah,
not
yeah.
I doubt we're never gonna if we evolve out of that, like that's when our species like stops existing. So
Right.
I think that like I said, future generations, our generations have gotten better at saying like that's not a good enough reason for me to have kids, right? Um,
There's also a lot of mental health issues with
right.
people
And
that probably don't want kids.
all the things that you just said too about like, you know, how overpopulating is affecting us
Yeah,
like and our
and the
planet, all
climate.
that good stuff, you know, like
Yeah,
we're that awareness has allowed us to kind of break free a little bit from that innate need to populate. But what's interesting to
right.
me is as I've gotten older, I'm finding out so much more and more about the difficulties of parenting. So there's a I'm
Yeah.
going to butcher this quote, but there's a quote as I said, Celeste Ng in Little Fires Everywhere, a lot of what she talks about is motherhood and mothering and parenting. Um, and there's a really interesting, a beautiful quote that she talks about essentially when parents look at their kids, they see like every version of them from the years previous and the years like to come. Like they see them so like for
Yeah.
us for instance, right? When my mother looks at me, she doesn't only see me now, she sees all of the years back to my infancy and
Mm-hmm.
has a vision of what she expects the future to look like,
Yeah. Okay.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And in
You're
those
just a walking
moments
experiment.
what
Just a walking experiment for your parents. I feel like.
right. I know exactly.
Yeah.
But so she looks at us, and all of that emotional attachment to all of those spans of us are always relevant every time they're looking at us.
Yeah.
And then she says it becomes this difficult thing because as parents, because of that like grotesque extension that they see us as we get older and we start to get further from them, right? And we develop into
Mm-hmm.
our own people, which is literally what we're supposed to do. They have this really deep hunger for wanting to like devour us again.
Yeah.
And
100%.
Celeste Ng like talks about it as in like this beautiful way, and she relates it to like the fact that like you're hungry in a way that you've never experienced before. It's like wanting to take an apple, eat the whole thing, this core and the seeds, and like be satisfied in like the full devourment of it. And like that's a part of
Humanity.
right, like that's like a part of that whole experience. But I feel like other species, other animals don't have that.
To an extent. To this extent, I mean.
Right, to the extent that we do because we can have all of these emotions even if we can't recognize them. But it was just so like it's just so it's like so it makes so much sense, right? When all we think about all the things that like how parents especially our parents like parents of our generation like have a hard time reprimanding their kids and like want to be their friend and like
Want to be their friend.
but
Your
when
parent.
you're looking at previous generations, especially like
Yeah.
the like my parents like over being overly affectionate wasn't a thing, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Being like I think my one of my parents was like someone was saying something about like how many times they heard I love you as a kid and it was like never. Um
That's sad.
it and my mother would be like it's more from action, but like we don't really say it. My mother obviously says it all the time, but like
Yeah.
there's like these interesting changes and it's like what we're now I like all the stuff we talked about last week like being overstimulated, we're like overly attached to our
Period.
offspring,
Period.
period, but
Overly.
like to
Yeah.
our offspring too. And it like makes it I don't know if it's because they stay in the house until they're 18. I don't know what it is, but there's like this overly okay. And I know I'm already thinking in my head, like, you're gonna be like, oh, you don't know anything. Neither of you are parents. You have no idea what it feels like,
That,
blah, blah, blah,
no,
blah, blah.
but like
I'm not
pets.
talking about, right. and that's what I was gonna say next. I'm not talking about it like it's a like a ew parents are weird and gross. Like I understand it. It's just
Yeah.
crazy that we experience it. And I also agree with what you just said. I remember open like so vividly moments where I literally wanted to eat Maji. Like she was with me and like that like you feel that love and you're like, "Oh my god, I just want to devour you. I love you so much." Like I 100% know what that's like from having a pet and I'm sure you do too.
Of mice and men, like Lenny or whatever his name is.
Right, where you and that there are moments where you're like, "Okay, I can't hug you that hard." Um
Yeah. There's an
I it's
overwhelming just
totally.
admiration and love and
And I
affection.
have that feeling with Dan sometimes too.
I mean, look, your best friends, your partner, your
Yeah. Like I think it's
sometimes
just a
your
deep
family.
type of
It's
love.
just it's a deep type of affection, and it's
Yeah. And it's
it
not to say that
happens.
every single parent feels all these things. So I think it's just not
No,
something that's I
yeah,
think it's not something that's unique to just parents. I don't think it's about you and your kid. I think it's about the love
so
that you
that
feel in
you,
that moment. Yeah. It has
yeah,
nothing to do with like you only feel this when you're a parent because I've definitely felt it before and
yeah,
I don't have biological children, I'll say it that way.
yeah,
Um
right,
so yeah,
agreed.
I think like, parenting has to be so
But there's just a lot of emotional,
hard. It's
yeah, 100%. Because you're balancing your own thoughts of how your kid's life should be, and also the kids'
and then you have
wants
like
and
multiple
needs.
kids, like,
Yeah, and multiple personalities,
and it's like we
and they
make all
manifest
this.
different like personalities of you within them. Like,
It's so frustrating. I've had to be, and I see this a lot with like my brother and my sister, right? Like it's so easy to get judgmental of like the way other people raise their kids, especially when like you see those kids and you have a relationship with them, and like all the freaking kids that I teach, but it's just like
hmm
it's so easy to do the wrong thing. And
100%.
it's just I think that's terrifying.
But that shouldn't debilitate anyone from having children,
No,
right?
but I mean then at the
Yeah,
end of the day when we
or
turn
having
around and
pets.
we're like, look at how this turned out. Look at how that turned out. Like and
Oh, that's
I
just
say this
life.
as a person too, right? Like I could be real quick to judge. And like when I
Yeah.
see a kid and I meet their parents, it takes me 2 seconds to tell you what that relationship's like, to tell you why that kid is the way that is. That's guys, this is why I studied psychology, because I work with kids. And when you can understand that, it
Yeah.
changes the way that you relate to the kid and how you help build up their confidences that are weakened by their relationship with their parents.
Period. Or I mean, just being the oldest sibling sometimes too helps.
Or that. That's very true. And you watch. Yeah. But it's just it's so interesting and I don't think I think that I agree with you. It shouldn't stop people from being parents, but I think
No.
that that's some we need to really learn the truth about what that is like and like what to see in it and what's really like what's chemically going on with your head and why you're in love with the idea of having kids and like people need to really see a hard truth before they actually commit to having children. And I think that that would change a lot of things in our country and the world.
Yeah, and also like there are a lot of kids up for adoption. Just as an added
And but so think
side
about
note.
like imagine if the process that you have to go through for an adopt for to be an adopted parent,
Yeah.
like the interviews, the emotion, like
Oh
they do a
yeah.
little psychological review on you, like the home visit, like all of that
Right.
stuff.
hmm
Imagine if, and I know this is a huge human and women rights thing that I'm bringing up right now, but like just imagine a world where you have to be able to do that to have your own kid.
Oh. Oh, I see.
Like
Okay.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
making it yourself, it's
Right.
fine. But like at the end of the day, you're gonna make it yourself, but you're not the only person that's like when other people around us have children, we're not the parents are not the ones that are being like only ones being influenced. You're influencing the entire community that you live within.
Yeah, because then that's another what am I trying to say? Um added it's like another layer basically of just like
Right.
your relationships, your interrelationships between not just your family but your friends, your own social life, your like their social lives, like
Yeah.
and all that stuff. Yeah, I get it.
But it takes
Totally.
like a bigger so when you first have a kid, you are the one who is the most impacted by having it, right?
Right.
Like your whole life changes, you have to cater to them. And as they get older, that
Yeah.
scale like shifts and goes from it being less of your problem to being more of society's problem. So every time that someone has a kid, our communities and our societies are unknowingly making an investment in them because long term they're going to affect us more than they're just going to affect their parents.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's why kids. They're. That's why. I think just in New Jersey, I don't know, whatever. In New Jersey, like you have to go to school from 1 to 16.
Right.
Like
Like we
forget
right.
whatever. If you're
So
after
the
16,
question
that's your
becomes,
whatever.
and I'm not going to say I see sides in favor, I see sides not in favor, and nobody like ream me
Yeah,
for this,
whatever.
but I'm just being perspective right now. Does the larger long-term impact or investment in society outweigh the larger impact on the parent at the beginning of life, when after 18, 19, or sometimes even earlier than that, you're having a bigger effect just on the parents than you are on the entire community, right? You spend your latter half of 60 years of life impacting your society and community versus the 20 years possibly you spend really impacting your parents. And I'm not saying like, I'm saying financially. I'm saying like, I'm also saying emotionally too. Like, so let's look at it from this perspective, right?
I don't know.
If there is this ratio,
Yeah.
and this is me just like
Just like yeah.
spitting this
Just
out.
yeah.
If there is this ratio of like 20% on the parents and then the rest of your life, 80% is more on the community, right, that you're
Yeah.
within, does that justify laws about how many kids you can have? Does that
I
make the federal, state, or whatever the higher power
yeah.
of the community,
Yeah.
does that
Allow.
allow them to have a say over the parents? When the long-term influence of the child is going to be had on society over just on the parents.
That's a whole humanitarian debate.
This is so interesting to me.
Because then that explains pros and cons,
Right.
both sides.
And I've
Right.
never, guys, I'm having a
Are
lot
you having
of
a
like,
crisis?
I'm having a lot of like mental epiphanies right now.
Yeah, because
Things that
that
I'm
really
seeing a
is
new
both.
way.
That's really both sides.
Right.
Like that, not that ratio, but just like the argument for and against. Right. Like the like against, let's just say against human or people with periods. Let's just not say women. Right. Lives. Like if you're against that, then you can make that argument. Like taking Texas's anti-abortion like 6 week law. Is it a law?
I can't, God knows what they're doing down there. I can't follow it enough, honestly, to make two cents, to like heads or tails of it.
It's society that I think is what they're for, right? The societal benefit of having these children. The argument all the time is like, what if that kid cures cancer? Which I mean, in my mind, cancer is curable. We haven't marketed it. That's just aside
I
for
don't
me.
disagree with you on that.
Whereas pro women's choice, it is the person that's already living their choice and it's their body. And those like 20%, like they're not capable or they don't want to do it, which is also a choice society, like as a person you are allowed
You get
to
to
have.
make, yeah.
So like you like really just hit both.
Yeah, and then
both
the
sides.
opposite of that, right, is that the people who are pro, right, the people who are pro abortion can honestly even say to the other end, like, what are you doing to our community? And look at how much money how much, like, your kids are an investment in our society, whether they end up doing a good thing or not, they're still investing themselves over
Like
time.
it's funny
Versus
because like they
parents,
really don't care when they come out though. Here's the thing, like these people don't care when these kids come out. That's the issue that I have with
I know, but I'm just saying, like, it's
pro-life
if we
people.
really were to look at, and now I take a different stance on that. Well, no, first of all, I can see both sides of this from that stance in the abortion, right? Like in the abortion thing.
I
If
can,
we're looking
yeah.
at it from like an impact on society, I would never say it's a thing of like, oh, we can't do it at all. But like if we're looking at it from the society side and that being a standpoint, I would think to my mind the same way you have to go through a process for adoption, you would have to go through a process that would be like, I don't know what that would look like, but some type of process to deem like, how is this going to impact our society in the future?
Yeah.
And then I also see it for the fact of like, if someone were to tell me that I can't have a baby just because I can't have a baby, like, fuck you, those are my rights. So I see it from both sides.
Yeah. Right. And
And it sucks because I would say yes in one instance and then I would say no in another instance. Like if I were to go to a rally about it I would go to a rally about it for like women's rights to be able to make a choice, but I would also go to a rally about it to be like, okay, let's see how this is going to affect our like everything in our society in 20 years. Like you you should have to go through some type of process that is overseen by a community.
And
So
see,
it's
this is
like,
where it gets iffy. And
right,
like again, you can make this argument in so many different ways.
so
Um,
like,
my stance is my stance. Your stance is your stance. I don't know.
yeah, and it just
Right?
it gets complicated. I think the part that sucks is that it gets complicated, and we so badly, as another wonderful human flaw, want a definitive answer, and like it really has to be a case by case,
Basis.
right? A
So
case
then,
by case.
if you, which I look, it's pro choice because like you're making a case by case basis, so it's pro your choice.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I've gotten to the point where I think everything in life is a case by case basis. I don't
Right,
think there
which
are
it
many
should be
things
your
that we
choice.
could,
Yeah,
yeah. I don't
because
think
like
there are
life is
many things
too
that we
like
can
there's so many
generalize as cases.
different. Every decision you make affects everything else that comes after that decision. So like just to make it open and not regulate every single thing in the world. And I'm not anti-state. Like that's not that's not what I'm saying. But just making it up to other people to make just we're just getting women's rights. Like this is just the topic at hand. Like just make it their choice.
Right.
Or people with periods rights. I don't
Right.
know. Like I'm too like
I agree.
that also is a is
Another
a
part of it.
part of it. Yes, correct. But there's
Yeah,
that.
it's just really. And then I also listened to this week Ibram XK, the anti-racism author.
Oh, I haven't. Yeah, I actually haven't
I
read that
listened
book.
to like an interview on with him talking about anti-racism, and like
Hmm.
it's relevant. What we just said is relevant to looking at race and racism, because if we actually looked at everything as a case by case basis instead of trying to generalize an entire race,
Yeah,
things would be so different too.
yeah, because even
But
race, every ism is a case by case basis.
yeah, and when we make them into too big of generalizations, that's when we start to fall into the flaws, because you
Right,
act
like
as if something's a certain way without knowing what it actually is.
right, like just making so there's a big um topic, I guess. I don't ever know any words that I'm saying out loud, honestly. There's a big topic in like the Asian American community
Mm.
that Asian American is too vast. It's the monolith. Like we're not being Asian American is a monolith. Like Southeast Asian is very different from East Asian, very different from the Middle Eastern Asians or the
Yeah.
South Asians.
Or
Like
to give that relevance, it's like saying you're from New York without saying like what like part of New York you're in, because Brooklyn's different than the Bronx, from different from Queens. You know what I mean? Like,
right, like each Asian American experience is different. Being Filipino American doesn't mean that I have the same struggles as being a Korean American or like a Chinese American or Vietnamese American or Hmong American, whatever. Like, um, and generalizing just now we're getting racism against Asian
we're hitting all the
Americans.
isms, guys, today. In
um,
every ism.
um, generalizing the Asian American experience now Asian American community is like, yes, there is racism within the Asian American experience, but it is a different racism when you break it down between Southeast Asians, East
Mm.
Asians, and then break down even further within the Filipino community versus the Indian community versus the I don't know, Iraqi community because they're Middle East. Like it's very vastly different,
Yeah.
and people forget that. And I'm not undermining any other racism being faced by Black Americans, Native Americans, Latinx Americans. Though there is also, I don't know if I want to say Latinx Americans or like, because there's also some, I read somewhere that verbiage or whatever is somewhat problematic, but I also can't attest to that because I just read something a couple of weeks ago about that. So whatever, like it's just like generalization, and that part is bad. I don't know how we got
Right.
on this topic either,
I don't know.
because you brought up
But I feel like here's the arch of everything. I think that the culmination in thought behind everything that we've talked about tonight is that
yeah,
we've moved away from the place where living within generals is
yeah,
appropriate. We are in a point where like we need to be so specific in a, almost like a really grotesque way. And I think this talks about the like this speaks to the complexity of humans and the human experience.
Yeah.
We can't we can't generalize and then make judgment on those generalizations. And worse yet, right, that leads to so many of the issues we face these days is that we cannot generalize, make judgment on those generalizations, and then act on those
Upon those
judgments
generalizations. Yeah.
which come from those generalizations.
Yeah. All the
Because I
stereotypes
think
and
that
everything. Yeah.
across all fronts, I think if you're looking at parenting, if you're looking at, you know, race, if you're looking at women's rights, so many of these things stem from like one like generalist and a generalist idea or and then
Yeah.
branch into judging that and
Yeah.
then
Deeming
trying to
it's
control it.
it's really deeming
Acting on it.
other as deeming different as bad,
Right.
which I think goes back to even like your first thing with Celeste Ng's quote or situation. Like, if your child is doing something other, you think it's bad,
Right.
which I don't think is fair.
No, I agree.
Which also like,
And
and
that's
and
for
this also
any
hits the
situation.
this also hits the anti like the pro life pro choice thing. Like, you don't have to get the abortion, so why do
Right.
you think someone else getting the abortion is bad?
Right.
Like,
Right. And that
same same
over
thing.
that whole
This
thing comes
all
from
overlaps.
an overall idealization of what life's supposed to be and giving birth supposed to be that's generalized about what women's role is
Mhm.
in the Bible, and then people are here to make judgment on it and act on that judgment by saying that they don't have the right. This is guys, I'm really into this episode right now from where I started. I'm like my brain is like really
We
going.
started at a Nextdoor fucking app.
My brain is like
Post.
really really going right now. I really this stuff is just
Because this isn't like you were personally drained, emotionally drained, but this is just a worldly. Like, it's
no, yeah, this
everywhere
is just
thing.
like it's so nice. It's nice to have these moments that really pull you out of your own self.
Yeah, and think about the whole society
Yeah,
or just the whole world in general.
because
Yeah.
it really does like my soul feels a little happier right now.
Because you know why? Because like some people when they have these stances only think about themselves, and I think that's the
Yeah.
issue. Whereas these conversations think about the whole society.
And if you think about yourself as a holistic person, and like I'm saying this as a person who does, like I believe in having a soul, right? Like that's
Yeah.
a stance that I have. So I feel the most drained in that when I get so caught up in like the moment to moment interactions that I'm having and working with clients, because I feel disconnected from that greater sense, right?
Mhm.
That which is communal,
Yeah.
in the way that I see it. So like talking about this is in some way creating that sense of community. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
because
of course.
I'm
Because you're like
taking
aiding
those
into
bigger
this.
perspectives, like you just
Yeah.
said. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting stuff.
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, I have conversations with people from the other like opposing opinions, but nothing too deep because I don't mind, but most people mind.
Sometimes it's hard.
It's
It
something
can
that's
be
hard.
so
Yeah,
hard to be in conversation with somebody who doesn't have the same view as you. Because it's
agreed.
like it's like learning a new language.
Agreed. And like, I'm not saying like it's easy for me to have these conversations. It's just
Right,
like
right.
It's very interesting to me to see the other side so that I can understand
Mm.
their side. Other times, sometimes I don't want to understand, and maybe they don't
Yeah.
want to understand me. Same thing.
And
Like,
it
depends on the
takes
day. It's a
and
while though.
I see this a lot in like me having to have interactions with honestly specifically my brother because I feel like the two of us are very different and we do speak very different languages on things.
Yeah.
Um like and I just had a really big conversation with him a couple of weeks ago. I have to be in a very specific place to be
Yeah.
able to go into that conversation.
Yeah.
I have
100%.
to have a lot of self awareness and I have to be very open to taking on other people's perspectives. And honestly, I will tell you this.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the best time for me to get into those conversations with people, and maybe even right now, what we're talking about right now, is I have to be too tired to put my defenses up.
Yeah. That's usually the best. Yeah, for me
You
too.
know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I have to be like I'm tired and emotionally drained and
Yeah, it's
I don't have
usually
like
random.
I don't have the
You don't have any walls
energy
up or
to
anything.
put up like to put up
Yeah.
a front or put up bullshit right now for you to
Yeah.
fight back at it so I can hide behind. So I'm just gonna stand here and take off all my armor and we're just gonna go at it and whatever happens happens.
That happened to me. That happened to me. I barely remember. I really remember. Jesus, when the Capitol got
Mm.
whatever, and also the Asian hate movement, like Stop Asian Hate movement went. I feel like I called every fucking person in the world.
All
I
right,
called
I remember
you.
you calling me. Yeah.
I called I called Monica. I called like random people getting their thoughts because I just couldn't deal with the racism, the blatant racism happening
Yeah.
in this country. Um, so I mean, I talked to a bunch of people pro my thought process, anti my thought process, and
Yeah.
like that's usually the best time is when you're like really just like
Really, because you literally can't even, like, you have to get to the point. Like,
you have to
you
at
can't send
those
out a
moments,
representative. You can't like
right?
bullshit your way through it. You're like, I'm too tired for this. So let's get through like
So let's
the
get through what you think and what I think.
subtleties and
Yeah.
yeah,
And
just
then
like
see where we're at the end. And if one of us is pissed, then oh
yeah.
well.
And it's like one of those things where like if
Save
you
spaces though. Like
well that's
that's
right,
also like a
true.
subconscious
Where
thing that
you
like
like where you push the meter, right?
yeah, yeah.
You're either what was I just listening? It might have been at school we were just talking about this. Like when we brought this up last time too, you're either talking or you're listening. And if you don't have the if you're used to being in a situation where you have to defend yourself, you're doing a lot of talking in that moment, right?
Yeah,
But if you
yeah.
take that out of the equation and you're not able to do that as much, you don't have a choice but to listen.
Correct. Right.
And
Agreed.
then you're able to take on those new perspectives. And sometimes for
Which
me
is
that just
yeah.
means not fighting with myself and actually listening to the other voices that are in my head
Right, right, right.
to be able to take on those new perspectives. But
Mm-hmm.
again, psychology and sociology. This stuff is
Yeah.
super interesting. So we're gonna find somebody who's a sociologist. I'm
Yeah.
gonna find
Anyone
somebody or psychologist or sociologist where we can talk about this stuff because this is I
social
want to
history
learn.
is
I want to
yeah.
learn more.
Just social studies
Yeah.
is
I
important,
know some social
honestly.
studies teachers. We can get them on here.
Yeah, we can get them on here.
In all honesty, friends, Brittany doesn't have the brain capacity to negotiate bringing people on the show right now. So once the wedding is over, we get into November, Maria and I will do some stuff. We'll have some more friends joining us, which we're really excited about. But until then, you're stuck with us, and we love
Yeah.
having you. So hope you love being here with us as we discussed a lot of things with isms today, and hopefully something stuck with you. That's something that maybe helped you see a new perspective because I saw a bunch of new perspectives.
Yeah, you had a moment here.
Yeah. But we will talk to you guys on the next episode. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Okay, bye.